So we had a change of schedule. I know I told you before the talk that it was going to be an AI talk, but then we had a change here again. So our original presenter and speaker is here for us. So our next speaker is a full stack developer, and he's the co-founder of OnClick with deep expertise in accessibility and inclusive design. He's passionate about creating web applications that meet WCAG standards, and he's passionate about building a true culture of accessibility in our industry. Personally, I think accessibility is very underrated, and we don't take it as serious as we should until we get lawsuits and things like that. So this is a very good talk to be, to listen to today. So today, he's going to be presenting on creating an accessibility culture. So please welcome Diego Hernandez.
There we go. Okay. Again, thank you guys for letting me speak today. I know it's end of the day, and accessibility is probably the most exciting topic you could think about today. So hopefully we'll stay engaged for the next 28 minutes here or so. So to boot off, who am I? So like you said, my name is Diego, and I am cursed with just trying to stay probably too busy. Like you mentioned, I'm the co-founder of OnClick Co-op. It's a web development agency, but I'm also involved with a couple other startups as well. So one of those being Compose.co is an A/B testing platform that is trying to be a little bit unique in the market with a pay-as-you-go billing schedule instead of just upfront costs. That way, for any of your A/B tests or CRO needs, you're just paying for the data you get, and you don't have recurring costs when we're not currently doing testing. We have no-code integrations with Shopify, as well as really deep developer tools that really let you use this tool in whatever ways your repo and tech stack require, including server-side rendering. And another startup that I'm involved with a little bit more deeply is Butter Software. So this is booking software for indoor golf clubs. The founder of this company was a indoor golf club owner himself, who just got really frustrated with the systems that were out there not really fitting the needs for that specific business. So I worked with him to start creating something that's going to be unique for that business that fills all the needs. We have a few customers lined up, and we're expecting to launch on Monday. So extremely busy week for me as well. So primarily, I'm here representing OnClick Co-op. So we're a web development agency that works in all sorts of different scales of websites, from just simple web pages for small businesses to full web applications as well. The idea by being a worker cooperative is that we are all board members. The co-op allows all of the employees to be equal voices in how the company is run, and it also gives everyone equal share on revenue. So in the tech industry in particular, it's very common, and I even heard people talking about this before this talk started, is you're going to get laid off at some point. And unfortunately, it's just kind of the trajectory that a lot of companies go to. And so you invest all this time and energy into this company. The people at the top and those investors, they get all of the profits, and then you're kind of just left at the dust. So the idea when we formed this agency is that we wanted to structure it in a way that was an impossibility. Every single worker has a vote as a board member, and every single worker has equal share in profit splitting. And so that was the values we kind of went into creating this agency. And some of the services we offer, like I mentioned, we call our microsites platform. So this allows very small business owners who are just wanting to start something for themselves, get this started with their websites that doesn't have to incur higher costs of like a Wix or the complexity of learning how to use platforms like that, and just lets them get started, have a presence, and they can start on their website. We also work with larger businesses that do have a bit more of a budget to build out their online presence, as well as working with full e-commerce builds. We primarily work in Shopify, and we're actually expecting to launch a client's website this next week as well. And we also work on web applications, either for clients or internally. So one of the internal web applications that we're working on right now is a governance application. Same sort of deal is we formed this cooperative that is a little bit more organized. An oversimplification would be calling it like a democratized business, where we do have to meet, speak about agenda items and vote on those items And we kind of recognize as well that there's not really software that lets you do that at scale. So that's an internal application we're expecting to launch in the coming months that allows similar businesses, a lot of law firms also have structures like this where you have members and agenda items and voting, and we're going to allow people to do that all in software with some cool encryption sort of things built into that for privacy. And we also have Snipify. Everyone needs to be working in AI at this point. So this is an agentic AI coding solution for Teams that integrates with your ticketing system to help build out quick features. And then, of course, the other big service we provide is accessibility. And so from here on, I'll probably refer to it as A11Y, or Ally is a common abbreviation of it, because, I mean, nobody likes writing this out. Nobody really knows how to spell it. If you try to knock it out on your keyboard, you're probably going to spell it wrong. So you'll commonly see this spelled as A11Y when you're referring to different things. And so what is web accessibility? There's a few definitions that I've written through here, and one of the most common ones I see in many teams is it's the afterthought. So your devs have a general idea of what web accessibility is. You know a little bit about ARIA, that's kind of a thing. You've used ARIA extended before. You know that your nav bars need to have like left-right keyboard movement. You'll take a lot of pride in saying that all your alt tags aren't empty and there's no missing alt tags. And you kind of just do your feature work by clicking around and hoping that it works. There's also the technical definition of web accessibility. And so this can be defined as, and I did write this a lot, so get ready for a word dump. Web accessibility defines the ability for users in varying constraints and disabilities to have an equivalent experience within your site, and also supporting such technologies and enhance the user experience with the United States Rehabilitation Act, Section 508 in the United States of America Disabilities Act and the European Accessibility Act legally define requirements for governments and businesses to conform to practice that allow people to access your services without any roadblocks, and the conventional standards to achieving the Web Accessibility Guidelines version 2.2, which defines various criterion, which are numerical conformance standards achieving perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust website development, and all of which are designed and versioned by the World Wide Web Consortium, which goal is to unify user experiences to the assistive technology and all the users have the same access to services, and another prevailing strategy for enhancing user experience being the accessible rich internet application roles and attributes enhancements for your semantic and HTML, which all accumulates in a rich set of tools and resources for you to correctly integrate accessibility into your website. And that's it. That's all you really need to know. Thank you. And so the third definition for what is web accessibility is what I focus on in here today, and it's creating an accessibility culture. And that doesn't mean that every ticket, every feature has to be 100% revolved around understanding accessibility and making it 100% accessible. It's a really complex topic, as we'll kind of dive into here, and there's no real correct answer for any which way to handle it. It's a highly contextual subject that depends on the feature you're working on and the user experience you're trying to create. So the goal is to just have accessibility be just a normal part of your planning and acceptance criteria. Just like UX, like what do the colors look, what does the flow look like, just adding accessibility to be part of the conversation while you're planning out features is honestly one of the largest things you can do to start moving towards an accessibility culture. One thing I also recommend as well is that your senior devs or your project leads and even your project managers get some upskilling in accessibility. And that just allows the culture to grow. If even just one person in your team really has a fine-tuned eye for what it means to have well-written accessibility code in your projects, they can be the one that starts flagging those issues and helps coach and grow your team's knowledge of that subject. And then as well, every developer on the team should just have a basic understanding of what accessibility is, and importantly, some of the tools that you can use to test and understand accessibility on your site. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit that makes it really easy to do testing with accessibility that does not involve the screen reader, because the screen reader is not the most fun experience to do, but we'll show a little bit of that and how you can sort of optimize that. And so, again, the whole goal with this is to just make it normal, make it part of the conversation. I mean, we're here at Utah.js to be nerdy, right? We're here to learn about new things we haven't thought about before. We get excited about JavaScript features. I'm sure we've all had conversations at work of someone implementing a really cool function or feature, and you just kind of dive into how it works. And so ideally, you can start, as you start learning about how accessibility works and all the different niches that go into it, you can start having similar conversations with your coworkers about this odd thing you learned about accessibility. And so how do we actually go and do it? So we'll look into some code examples to just kind of give some, and is that too bright? Do we need to go dark mode? I always get ridiculed at work for being the one dev that works in light mode. Do we like that better? Okay. And okay, so again, a very minor example here is you have a ticket that you're just going to go in and add your shopping cart button, right? This is what it looks like, and what do you typically do, right? You're going to go in, define a button. You like to work with SVGs because they scale a little bit better than your images. So you throw an SVG in there and you call it a day, right? You can click it, it does its thing, you move on. And so what's missing on there is that conversation of how do you make this accessible? Obviously, you can look at it and understand what it does, but all of a sudden, if you take that away, if you can't, and I can't scroll it here right now, if you can't visually see that button, what is the experience going on there, right? Because we don't have text here, right? This isn't an add to cart. There's no add to cart text on here. Us as users can look at this and inherently understand that that's what this is, an add to cart button. And that's what the goal with accessibility is starting to be, is you want to recognize what is the experience you're trying to create. Here, for sighted users, it's really easy, right? This is a shopping cart button. But now you just have to dig in a little bit deeper to understand how like a visually impaired user is going to see this. And again, it's not always just blind people. Most people who need help with accessibility are like partially impaired in their vision. So things like this might be a little bit blurry. These lines might be too thin and it might be hard for them to see. And so for them, it's easier to use a screen reader in coordination with what they can already see to understand what they're working with. And so the best tool to start working with, and each browser is going to have a different version of this. I actually really like Firefox's version of this the most, but in Chrome, you can open up your DevTools here, and if you hit Command-Shift-P, it'll open up this palette where you can search accessibility. And right here, you're going to have this toggle that says Show Accessibility, and that's going to open on the side right here, Accessibility. And it'll give you this option to enable full page accessibility tree. Mine's already turned on, and you notice because of that, I have this little guy hanging out right here. So as soon as I click that on, I'm going to be seeing what the screen reader sees. So you don't have to go in and turn on VoiceOver or NVDA if you're on Windows to understand what a visually impaired person using that technology is going to be using. Assistive technology is kind of the shorthand for things like screen readers and other things like that. And you can immediately understand the issue at hand here, right? If this is what the screen reader is seeing, they're seeing a button with an empty text and image with an empty text. And so immediately you can recognize that some of your users are missing the flow here. You're not creating a consistent experience for everyone. And I know I kind of breezed over that as a bit of a joke, but the overall standard for how this works is WCAG. And we're on version 2.2 right now. What's nice about how WCAG version stuff is it's not like any backend devs here. It's not like working with an API change where you have to like cry about what broke, what you need to change. They're really nice about it. When they release a new version, it's additive things. They're generally never going to change any sort of standard on here. And I won't dive too much into it, but that is kind of the standards that they hold, is all of how they define accessibility as are these success criterion. And there's a bunch of them, and we'll talk a little bit more of that near the end. But the overall category is that things are perceivable for all users, operable for all users, understandable for all users, and robust for all users. And so here we're missing understandable, right? we're not providing what's called, and you can see this in your dev tools, an accessible label within this text. And so the most basic, easy version to fix this is if we turn on our gooder version of this, we can come in and fix this a little bit. So we can go in and add text, right? Like the add to cart. And I mean, this is one thing that you'll notice with a lot is accessibility with clash with UX a lot of the times, where a designer really wants one thing one way, and it just might make it potentially harder to do accessible version of that. But I've never tried to like reject a design because it's harder to be accessible. If we look at this button now with our accessibility tree, we can click on here and see that the content is add to cart. We can see that it's recognizing it there. But that kind of breaks the design. So what we're going to want to do is very simple. We have these ARIA attributes that are designed to enhance your semantic HTML. And again, we'll dive into how more of these works near the end. But the most common one you'll see is ARIA label, where before I removed that text, it was able to recognize that this button was add to cart. And that's exactly what the label is going to do. So whatever label I give this here, add to cart, is now the label that continues to be on that button. So I can still honor the initial design of what was going on with this button while having a more accessible approach. Now we're more operable, right? People with assistive technologies can understand what's going on here. But you'll also see that we still have this weird image here. And that's because we still are rendering an SVG on this. And the SVG doesn't really add any context, right? We could say that this is like a shopping cart image, but it's not really important. Again, the purpose of the button is to add to cart. What kind of picture is making that happen doesn't really matter. So another common one to do when you have decorative items like that is you can do your ARIA hidden true, where now we don't have that image anymore. Because the issue with blank images like that is the screen readers will say exactly that. It'll just say image blank. And again, it's not a huge deal, but it is just a little confusing to screen reader users on like, why is that even there? Another version to do this is maybe you do like your image tags instead of your SVGs for whatever reason. And so this is the same sort of button, but it's using an image tag. And so going through what we just learned, we might go through here, and let me actually, I don't want this one, let's work on this guy. Going through what we just learned, we understand, okay, we need to tell the users in some way that this is the add to cart button. So Copilot recognizes that right here. We're gonna add the ARIA label add to cart, but we still have the alt text on there. And I remember as a developer, I've been told that alt text always needs to describe what that is. So this is going to be icon of a shopping cart, right? And so now when we go and look at that, we get icon of a shopping cart on here. And now the issue we're going to run into here is that the screen reader is going to read both. This button's not going to read add to cart icon of a shopping cart. And again, that's just odd. It's not really like the best sort of ways to do it. And the thing with images is that they're not supposed to necessarily describe what the image is, but what the action here is happening. So a cool thing with alt text is you can do just that. Here we don't really need an ARIA label anymore because our icon can do, our image can do that. Here we can do, instead just do, what was it calling this, add to shopping cart? And we'll see that our button is now add to shopping cart because it's inheriting that from the alt text of that image. SVGs work a little bit different, somewhat frustratingly. SVGs, you can technically do like alt text with an attribute here called title, but it's going to be visible, and there's some workarounds there. So for the most part, if I'm working with an SVG, I'm just going to hide that and do an ARIA label there. But if I do get to work with an actual image tag, that's something that's also available to you there, is that the alt text doesn't necessarily need to describe what the image looks like. It needs to describe what the purpose of that image is. And the purpose of this image is to tell the user that this is the add to shopping cart button. And so, again, just a bunch of examples of way to do this. We have this other one here where we could do images with a screen reader only sort of text. So again, the other thing to note with alt text is trying to get out of your head that it always needs to say something. You'll hear that a lot, that your alt text needs to be there in some way. And the way that it can be there is as an empty string. So if I save that and I come back to here, you'll notice like this one is a blank image, where this one at the bottom now is ignored. So if you do have decorative images in your content, an empty alt text is also valid alt text. This is specifically telling the screen reader and assistive technology that this is a decorative image. You don't have to worry about it in any way, ignore it. It still gives a visual representation for sighted users, but now you've kind of gotten rid of it. And there's a ton of sort of use cases for that. And it's also debatable on like what is alt text or decorative images. I won't get too much on current events on here, but one thing I noticed in the New York Times when you look through stuff like this, and it is nice once you like understand these tools to kind of start looking through some of these larger corporations to see how they handle stuff. For the most part, oh, maybe they changed this. So here they do have just a blank image. There's no, it's not marked as decorative in any way. It's just, oh, because that's an ad, okay. Let's see. Maybe they changed this. I noticed before that the New York Times, depending on the content, would mark a lot of their images decorative. Oh, and I guess they've just changed that philosophy since I last looked at this. But that is a kind of fun thing to do, especially with more complex UI structures like carousels, is kind of just go through and with this accessibility tree tool, see how other people do it, and you'll learn a lot through that as well. And I really kind of just blew through time here. So, wow, yeah. I guess that's the basic concept I'm trying to convey here, is that this is just something you want to start thinking about. Again, normally when you work on a feature, it's just put the add to cart button on there, right? If I go back to this other view with the polite example, is, hey, when someone adds something to cart, make that little button icon pop up, right? And you did it, however you did it in your code, you can see that when you click the button, that number goes up, bing, bang, job done. This, and I've seen this before, one of the reasons I got really well versed into accessibility is when I started a new job, one of our clients received a lawsuit relating to accessibility. So my job was to read through this entire document here, all of WCAG, and line by line, complaint by complaint, tell them which conformance standards we were actually supporting that was contrary to what was on this lawsuit. And it was a great deep dive experience that led me to understand a lot of these things. But again, it's asking yourself, what is the experience here? If I click this button, as a sighted user, I can see the number 7 pop up in here. So as someone who's visually impaired, how do I give them an equivalent experience? That's really all you have to think about. It doesn't have to be a big deep dive. It doesn't have to be, and that's where a lot of people get stuck, is they write a lot of poor accessibility code, and then it's this big deal of like, oh, we have this huge amount of pages we have to update. the sooner you can start on this accessibility culture of just upskilling a handful of devs that have a good eye to start finding these things, training other developers to understand how to use these tools, you'll start being able to ship just well accessible code, even if it's at a lower standard. And that's something defined by WCAG as well. And you'll see these these different success criterion. There's AA, AAA, and just a level A. These should be your baselines that every website should have. AAA can get kind of nuts. For the most part, you can ignore that. And AA is kind of what your baseline should be as a business. Again, WCAG is sort of the template for what a lot of developers use. And it's only until literally this year, June 2025, is when the European Accessibility Act was finally started, meaning that you have to comply to that if your business does any sort of, if it's even accessible. If someone in Europe can log on and purchase on your site, you have to conform to their standards. And they're actually the only ones that specifically say that WCAG 2.2 is what you should be looking at. The ADA Act, Americans with Disability, and even Section 508, which defined that government websites need to be accessible, didn't really even give solid guidelines to what that would be like. So it kind of was the Wild West for a long time, but now we do have specific things to look at that give you a good guidance on that. And again, the correct answer with something like this is again, going back to ARIA, you can add ARIA polite to any sort of context. So in this case, it's a span element. You add ARIA polite so that, and I think this one's the updated one, when you do use your screen reader, so in this case, I'm going to use voiceover utility. And two things I'll recommend, especially if you do cross-device screen reader testing like I'll do on Windows and Mac, is just kind of make it easier for you to use the same thing. So all of them will have what they call the modifier key. So in order to do specific features with VoiceOver, I've changed it to caps because that's what NVDA does. And I don't know, I feel like I'm more of a boomer millennial, and like the less things I have to remember, the easier it is for me. So I've kind of unified that, and then especially just turn off the, I think it's one of these, turn off the speech reader like actually talking to you. They all have a couple different ways to do it, and I think it's just this one for VoiceOver. That'll just save your life. That's what I hated for the longest time with doing screen reader testing, is that the VoiceOver would turn on and just hurt my brain. If you turn off the actual person talking to you, you can just have this text show up that will kind of confirm to you that your stuff is working. So you can see here, when I click this button, I visually get the number 2 on there, and I have items added to cart. I'll quickly just end here with just some resources, and I'll leave this up on the screen at the end. Again, it is a big topic to get into, but that specifically, just the accessibility tree on Chrome will show you a lot of the ways. And then our friends over at USU have this foundation called WebAIM. Fantastic, fantastic resources. This is all coming from the USU up in Logan, and they have this checklist, this WCAG checklist of things you should check on your website. I would recommend to everyone filter this to AA and then just read through this. And it's a much smaller list than the full one, but it's going to give you a much better understanding of what you need to do. And yeah, so as OnClick, we also provide training if you guys need to have more context to what's going on specifically with your websites, or if you just want some guidance, full training, whatever it is. This is a link to that Google Doc with just some different things to get you prepared with accessibility, and this link lets you contact us at OnClick. Okay.